Many times in philosophy we ask questions like, what is the world made out of? How did the world come into existence? Was this action right or wrong? Maybe we ask a question or what kind of knowledge do we have or what we can have? You see, many times we ask these big, grand questions in philosophy and try to answer the most biggest and the greatest problems to ever exist. But truly, there is one philosophical question which you should ask, which might hit so close to home that, well, it's a bit scary. And that philosophical question is, what are you going to do? You see, we can always think about what is the world? Interesting. But what are you going to do about it? What the world is? What's important is what are you going to do? You see, we can ask, oh wow, maybe we can think, what's the best system for society? What's the best form of government? But so what? What are you going to do? I mean, are you gonna just sit there and think? Are you gonna philosophize? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that inherently, and that's a great way to spend time, I guess. But truly, what are you going to do? I mean, surely we shouldn't just look at the world and say, what is this? Surely at some point, whether we answer 1,000 questions or at the very beginning, we have to ask, what are we going to do? Because we have to do something at some point, no matter what point you set that at some point, eventually you're gonna get to the point where it's been enough thinking, enough this, enough that, and it's time for action. But what is that action that you're gonna take? I mean, is the action gonna be doing more philosophy? Okay. Is the action gonna be chasing your dreams? I mean, that sounds great. But what about that day, when that bad day eventually comes? Now let's not hope that a bad day comes. Let's hope that today is a good day. But eventually a bad day will come. One day something bad will happen, whether something small like car breaks down or something big like losing a loved one. Something bad is gonna happen one day. And so, once again, we must ask, what are you going to do? When the bad day comes, are you gonna crumble under the pressure of a new job? Are you gonna just lose faith in humanity because somebody did something bad to you? Are you just gonna sit still and do nothing? Are you gonna accept what happened and just move on? Are you gonna maybe try to change it? Change something in society, try to prevent that it won't happen in the future? But once again, we have to ask, what are you going to do? And it means action. At some point in philosophy, we have to stop thinking about, what is the world? And one day we have to say, well, what are we going to actually do today? What are we going to do in our actions to find out about the world? What are we going to do in our actions to allow ourselves to even be able to have those moments where we can think, what is the world made out of? Because all of these questions sure are amazing and important in all their ways, but in many ways we forget an even more important question, and that is, what are we going to do? What are the actions that we should take to pursue the goals that we should set? I mean, surely we all have some goals that we want to reach. We have some end point in mind. And that input could be almost anything. It could be simply, I wish to know more about this. That is a good endpoint. But once again, then you just have to ask, what are you going to do? Are you gonna go and to the library and read a book? Are you gonna search online for the information? Are you gonna what are you going to do? But I think many times we neglect the action part and thinking about our actions, thinking about what we should do, thinking about the future in general. Many times we think to ourselves, oh yes, these big grand questions, but in your day-to-day life, which matters more? Some big grand question, or thinking about the beginning of the universe again. Like, great, but in your day-to-day life, isn't a more meaningful, a more relevant question something like, what are you going to do? Are you gonna go to the gym? Are you gonna make a new recipe that you've never tried? Are you gonna do something? Or are you just gonna think about big questions? And once again, there is nothing inherently wrong with that. But at some point, you have to admit to yourself, we have to take some sort of action. And well, then we have to ask what that action is. What are we actually going to do? And is it gonna be something brave, or is it gonna be something normal? You see, there's a lot of people who fall down this path, and when they ask the question, what are you going to do? They're like, well, I've never thought about that. I've never thought about what I'm gonna do. I just always followed. They said, go to school, study hard. Fine, great. But think to yourself, what are you going to do? I mean, at some point, you don't want to wake up and be like, well, I never actually thought to myself, what should I do? I never thought to myself, is this what I want to do? Is this the actions that I want to take? And maybe you should take the brave actions. Maybe you should start a new hobby. Maybe you should start a business. Maybe you should do whatever the brave thing is that you want to do, but you've simply never allowed yourself to ask the question, what am I going to do? And you've simply been on this path. You've been like a leaf in the wind or a twig in a river, just following the currents, being pushed around and flown here and there with no mind of your own. And so the next time you have any decision to make, whether it be big or small, whether it be buying this food at the store or that food, just ask yourself, what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna go down the same path every day? Am I gonna do the thing that others told me to do? Am I gonna do the thing that makes me fit in and makes me be normal? Or are you gonna do the brave thing? Are you gonna do the thing that you actually want to do? And sometimes those things correlate. And sometimes the things that you wanna do correlate very well with what others tell you to do. But sometimes they don't. And so, what are you going to do? That is a big question that I think we all need to ask. I think in philosophy, we don't ask it enough. We ask all kinds of big questions that in reality might not have that big of a meaning in our lives. And so, we should ask something that has meaning. And that's, what are you going to do? What are you gonna go do after you watch this video? Are you gonna do the same thing that you always did? Or are you gonna try something new? Who knows? Only you know. And so, anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day.